by over 3 times as much as generic Prozac.
Fueling the debate, Serafim's marketing blitz started just before Eli Lilly lost its exclusive patent to sell Prozac, a drug that generates $2 billion in sales each year. With Serafim, the company obtained a new patent, and for now they are the only company that can market a treatment for PMDD.
This whole process of creating disease awareness is controversial, and I think it's sort of a question that we should decide as a society. And what bothers me about it is that it's being promoted by an industry that has its own motivations, which have nothing to do with our culture or our physical well-being or really our health as a society.
I can't help but think that there are millions of Americans who are taking drugs that they probably don't need and may be even harmful. That they're being convinced, and their doctors are being convinced, that they should take lifelong drugs that probably are of no net benefit and may be of net harm.
Clearly, in our culture, we tend to look for quick fixes and pills that can, and this has really been the emphasis, whether we're talking about obesity or any other health problems. Certainly the direct-to-consumer advertising feeds on this.
We don't look at environmental problems that might be causing asthma or causing these allergies. We don't look at lifestyle issues that might be causing depression or causing, indigestion and so forth, or erectile dysfunction for that matter. Instead, we just sort of talk about it at the level of individual biology. And so that means we're not looking at social causes. It means we're also then not looking for social solutions.
I think it's very important for patients, in a sense, to give their doctor permission not to prescribe a drug by saying to the doctor, no, I don't want a drug unless I really need a drug. And then if the doctor, who will be taken aback by this, says, well, yes, I really do think you need a drug, then it's up to the patient, or I think the patient should say, is there something, even though this is a free sample, and I may use this free sample until it runs out, is there a drug for the same condition that's cheaper, or is there a generic?
You really need to be your own advocate, and you need to be educated, and that means spending a lot of time doing research about any medication that you're going to take, any healthcare procedure that you're going to undergo.
Consumers really need something to protect themselves. We look at our publications, Worst Pills, Best Pills, as a source of information for prescription drug consumers. Not only do we do a book, a newsletter called Worst Pills, Best Pills News, but we now have a website to give people objective comparative information so that they can decide for themselves, so they have something to balance the advertising.
Groups like Public Citizen have been working tirelessly to arm consumers with important information. Also necessary, say advocates, are campaigns to tackle the industry's mass targeting of our healthcare providers. While direct-to-consumer advertising remains the most visible aspect of the drug industry's overall marketing approach, the real story lies behind the television screens. Invisible to most consumers, the majority of pharmaceutical promotion is still directed at medical professionals. Increasingly, drug companies are pushing their brands at medical conferences and in medical journals. In addition, there are close to 100,000 industry sales representatives who spend countless hours visiting hospitals and physicians' offices and leaving behind branded items to remind both doctor and patient who they are and what they're selling.
Anyone who's been a patient or has ever set foot in a doctor's office know that the offices are just flooded from clocks, pens, coffee mugs, calendars with branded drug names on them. In fact, if you pulled over any medical resident or medical student who was wearing a white coat, and there have been studies that have done this, likely almost all of the things in their pockets would be branded products, whether it's from their pen, their stethoscope tag, compass, other things that they use for medical purposes. And so the most obvious thing about that is that doctors and students even are walking advertisements, really saying these things are okay, advertising for these products, which is really, that's a problem in itself. And then, of course, the The other problem, which I consider even the primary problem, is that they're receiving gifts from company and therefore developing relationships with the companies.
You get cases and cases of pens and cases of stethoscopes and things like that that are all within the AMA and pharma guidelines, but you also have a budget that pretty much is unrestricted.
You know, doctors now, their morale is fairly low. Managed care is causing a lot of problems for them. They're being treated now as just, you know, one more vendor in some respects. And the drug company salespeople treat them with terrific respect.
This starts out at the first day of medical school, and in many medical schools, even the incoming students that, you know, are 2 years away from seeing a patient will start to get gifts from the pharmaceutical industry. And as these students get farther along in their medical education, the interactions and the gifts escalate to free lunches, to dinners, to trips.
No matter where you spend money in pharmaceutical promotion, whether it's within sample distribution, educational programming, non-educational programming, champagne, brunches, happy hours, New York jet tickets, no matter where you spend the money, you make money. And my boss always told me, don't worry about it. There'll always be more funding. Spend what you can. In fact, if I give you $100,000 to spend, Gene, I want you to spend $200,000.
Certain activities that would be illegal if they were called marketing are not illegal if they're called education. There's a safe harbor for them. For example, it's illegal to give kickbacks to doctors to prescribe your drug. But if you're essentially paying them to educate other doctors or to be educated by other doctors, then it's no longer a kickback.
You can hide anything under educational. You can hide 18 holes of golf for 50 people under an educational event. And during those 18 holes, you can give a case of scotch that costs $1,000 to each one of the recipients of this free golf round. You can give golf clubs to individuals, and it's all under educational. So when the drug company says, oh no, we don't spend money on those promotions anymore, it's all educational, I know for a fact that anybody that played golf with me got a $300 putter, and my bosses never saw that on the expense form because it went under education.
All kinds of things with a sort of thin educational veneer over them. That's where I think the lion's share of their marketing money goes. And they get what they pay for. I mean, they're not charities. They track very carefully what doctors prescribe before and after they attend one of these events. And they know that the prescriptions for the company drug go up.
Obviously, that drug company that I talked about, the powers that be will say, this is not the case, this is the exception and not the rule, this is the way it used to be. Well, that's baloney. Again, I've got very close contacts still in the industry, and I'll get phone calls once a week. Listen, I've got $35,000 to spend this month. How can I do it? Give me something that won't look so bad that, but I need to spend the money. I need to spend.
In addition to providing gifts and trips, perhaps the most potent weapon in the drug rep's arsenal is free drug samples, usually accompanied by supporting literature. In 2004, the industry gave away the retail equivalent of almost $16 billion worth of drugs, and these products are the chief enabler of the marketing machine.
On the one hand, you have the consumer advertising, so the consumer is sort of prepared by having seen this on TV. On the other hand, you have the doctor who's been prepared by the rep, and you also have that sample. Those sort of things all meet together, and the consumer goes in and says, I have this problem, and I saw this ad, and the doctor says, oh, I have this study that somebody dropped off about this, and in fact, here's the drug. And that momentum is unbeatable, essentially. And it works, even if there are people out there saying, hey, actually there was a federal agency that said that's not the right drug to take, that's actually not the most cost-effective drug. None of that stuff matters because that apparatus that I just described is so powerful.
And